Hi guys, today we're going to be taking a step-by-step walkthrough flow in creating the approval process going in and out of Teams and SharePoint lists that I did in the video before, which I'll link in the description below or pop up above. If you haven't watched that already, then make sure you watch that first so you know what we're trying to do in the end. And this might be a 2 or 3 parter depending on how long it goes, because I'll start with something basic and then show you how to add things in to get more and more complex, because if you just look at the end result it looks really complicated, but actually if you build it up it will start to make sense. So by the end of this video you'll know how to set up a basic approval flow in Power Automate and get that approval notification coming into Teams. I'm Gavin Jones, I'm Transformation Manager for a Fortune 500 company, and all the tips that we go through have come out of real life examples in a real company. Got a new video coming out on Teams every Tuesday, so make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified every time I release a new video. And if you want a free download of a presentation that we do for our in-person training, or if you just want to know all of the tips written down in one place, then make sure you hit the free download button in the description below to get that deck. So let's go on and have a look at Flow and Teams. Okay, so first of all, Power Automate, Microsoft Power Automate used to be called Microsoft Flow. I keep switching between the two by accident, so if I say Flow rather than Power Automate, I mean the same thing. But confusingly, things in Power Automate are called flows still, so rather than automations. So don't make it easy for me. So apologies if I keep flipping. But let's start and get into Power Automate. So if you're not in Power Automate already, you would click on your Windows 365 or Office 365 waffle menu and click Power Automate. You'd come into the home bit of Power Automate. So it tries to show you some suggestions about things you might want to do. If you've got any approval requests, they come into your home as well. And you can have a scan through some templates that you might want to look at. So we're going to jump straight to create, and we'll get into the same sort of area anyway. You can either start from scratch, which you don't want to do if you've never done any flows before, or you can start from a template. There's some templates down here, and obviously we want to do approval, so if we click on approval we can start to see some of the templates that might be available to us from an approval flow. So like I said, if you've not seen the first video, go and watch that, because what we're trying to do in the end is get an approval flow with multiple approvers, multiple steps, and have a dynamic list of emails that we can add into that list so people don't have to go in and edit the flow if anyone changes, and also want to keep track of that progress across that approval steps. So we want to then go into a SharePoint list. So obviously there probably won't be a template for the exact thing that you want to do, but we can pick something that's a good start. So when I went back in to have a look at what's available now, then my eye went to this one first. So when a file's added, because I guess we want to think about the trigger as well. We don't want it manually triggered. We want it as soon as a file's gone into this submitted folder that we did in the last video. We want that to trigger automatically. So when a file's added, approve file using SharePoint content approval. So when you first click on a flow, it takes you into this screen. If you click on a template rather, this is saying all the connections that it's going to connect to, it needs to have some sort of authentication to link it in. So if any of these aren't green ticks, you would just click on the 3 dots and click your login. It'd ask you to go there and probably sign in, or just click connect. So all these ticks got to be green for you to continue, but all of mine are. So we'll click continue, and that's going to show us the template flow, and then we can have a quick look through it before we jump into it to see if it's going to be a good starting base for us to use or not. And if you've not used flow or not, it might not make sense, but having a look through a few templates will give you the gist about what's going on. So this one's saying when an item is created, is our first clue. So it's an item, not a file. An item is created, and then so that's going to pick up a SharePoint site or a team, pick a certain library, so probably a document library, and then say which folder you want to monitor. And whenever anything's changed or added into there, or when it's created, it's then going to kick off the flow. So then it's saying, check if a document's a file. So I guess because it's an item, not specifically a file, it could be a folder. So this is saying if it's a folder, if it's not a folder, then carry on. If it is a folder, if it's not a folder in this instance, don't do anything, just finish the flow and ignore it. So if it is a folder, if is a folder is equal to false, as in it's not a folder, then it must be a file if you've picked a document library. Then it clicks off the rest of the flow, which is this big yes block. So then it's doing get my profile, so you can click down to see what it's doing. So it's getting your email address. It's then getting the file metadata. So whenever you see this block here, it's picking up something from further up the flow. We'll have a look at that a bit later. So then it's saying, tell me all the stuff that's going with that file. Then it's saying, right, well, then we'll kick off an approval. Approve, reject, first to respond. You can put some dynamic stuff into the title. So it's saying, give me the display name of that document, which is what you need that get file metadata to do. So you need to get all the data first before you can display it. Then it's saying assign to, and it's just a blank box for you to type in an email address. And you can put a link back to the document. So that's a link, dynamic link there to whatever we picked up from this get file metadata, which is then from the trigger, which is when an item is created. So it's looking pretty good so far for what we want, I think. And then it's kicking off that approval flow. It's waiting for the response. And if it's approved, then do all the stuff in the yes. And if it's not approved, then do all the stuff in the no. In start and approval, if you click on the advanced options, enable notifications, so enable email and push notifications, you want as yes. And then what that'll do is, say if you do any other postings, that's going to email the person that you've put in your assigned to. But also they'll get a push notification from Flow, and if they're using Teams, they'll also get it from the Flow bot in Teams. If they're using the Flow Empower Automate mobile app, they'll get a notification on their phone as well. And the good thing about doing that is there's some other options for approvals and sending in the different places. If you just make that to yes, one, it's doing a lot of that stuff for you, and two, some of the other more complicated options where you can post an adaptive card into Teams and get it into approving the channel, stuff like that. Some of them don't link together. So if you do it this way, if you approve the email, it won't let you then approve the push notification. If you approve it on your mobile, it won't let you approve it on email. So it's sort of like linked together. Some of the other options I explored didn't seem like that was working or easy if it was possible. So then it's gonna start doing stuff that we might not want it to do in our instance. So then it's saying set content status to approve. So this is then picking back up that document library and making some of the tags for the metadata of that document library as approved. Then it's doing something about content moderator error, something to do with the approval workflow that's already in SharePoint. And then it's sending, if there is an error there, it's sending an email back to the person to say it's failed. But that's just updating the approval status in the document library. Same with the no, it's going to mark it as rejected, and if there's an error, it sends an email. So that's not really what we want to do, because we don't want the document library to hold all that metadata, because we're going to embed this flow into a large team that's got, gigabytes of if not terabytes, of files in that team, putting all this metadata in sort of would need it then to go into every single file, because you're just doing it for one document library. We don't want that. We just want a very simple, or a relatively simple list specifically for this approval. So actually, after we work down this template, that's probably not a great place for us to start, and it's not posting into Teams for us. We'd have to go and add that in manually and know all the stuff about posting into Teams. So it was worth having a look through to see what it did, but actually we're going to go back to create and see if there's another template that's a better starting position for us. So we want to keep the trigger of when a new file is started, and we want to post into Teams if we can. So this one's the one that's good. So start approval for a new document. So that's keeping the trigger we want, and notify via Teams, which is what we want to do. So let's click that one and see if this template's a bit of a better starting position for us. Occasionally I have got this, so I was going to edit it out the first time because it took me a while to get over it. So if you click it and let's get this little plug icon, I thought it was my internet connection, but there doesn't seem to be any way to get out of it. So all I can, if you do get that, obviously you can't move on in the flow. Check your internet, refresh the page. Seemed like the internet's working because it went to this page for us, didn't it? But yeah, just keep trying the same to get back onto the same template if that happens to you. So let's try again. Okay, so this time it seems to have worked. So it's going to say what it's going to connect to. We've got green ticks for all the connections. So that looks good. Let's continue. And then here we go. So we're going to start working through this template. So this is going to, when a file is created, so that's good because it's a file, not an item like the previous one. So then you miss out the step you need to say, is it actually a file or is it a folder? We just know it's going to be a file. So when a file's created, it's going to pick up some stuff for us. Then it's going to post a message into Teams. One thing to note about the templates is, which you should do when you're making your own flow, you can rename what each step is called. So if you click on the three dots and rename, you can rename what this step displays. Some of the downsides about that for a template is this one says post message, for example. This one says post approval message. This one says post rejection message. They're actually all the same add-in, and I come in to show you how to add in stuff manually. And none of them are called that. So then you need to sort of go through trial and error and find out which particular step they've added in because they've renamed it in the template, if that makes sense. But I'll come back to that later. So it's going to post a message into the team for us, into a channel, which is great. It's going to pick up some of the stuff we've got from the file. So it's going to say, hi team, the person that's put the file in has added a new file. Some of this is HTML, so you can format the thing that goes into Teams nicely. It's going to pick up some body stuff, what the link is for the file and the name, and actually you can, this is hopefully going to wrap it so the name is a hyperlink and it's going to link back to the link of the file, which is a nice little thing to keep in there. So please review the file and approve ASAP, so that's what's going to appear in the team. Then it's going to kick off an approval. It's not going to let you approve it from this Teams message. So the approval is what's going to actually go to people to approve and reject. It's going to pick up first to respond, which is what we want. So if you can have it go to multiple people, but the first person say it's approved, it means it's approved. First person say it's rejected, rejects it, and it takes off everyone else's view. It's got some links back to the stuff we saw before, and it's got the same options we've got if we want to use those. So if it's got some error handling in, which is great, which I am not brilliant at doing in the flow that I made, admittedly. I should get better at that. So if the approval flow fails at all at that step, all this right hand bit is saying is it's if this red dotted line is, if this bit fails, do this bit, otherwise do the rest of the flow. So if the thing failed completely at that stage, it's saying then, right, we'll get the mail, which I think might be the person's mail that's assigned into the flows to start with, rather than it's not picking up the email of the person that's created the file. So this is picking up the person that's done the flow and sending them an email saying it's failed to start. It's not got anything else in here, so sometimes you can do error handling where it'll tell you, put a link back into which particular run of the flow failed. I'm not seeing that here, but I might be wrong. I did see a good video off Microsoft that went through a lot of error handling stuff, so if I can remember which one it is, I'll link that in the description below as well. And then just finish the flow. So hopefully our flow won't fail, and we'll go through this left-hand branch. So that's saying start the approval, and then this condition is just saying, well, then you start the approval, but you got to wait for the response. So if the response is equal to approve, then it's yes, and post a message back into the team saying it's been approved. If it's no, then post a message back into the team to say it's been rejected. So this has got most of the stuff we want in there. So we probably want to post a message into the team just to say that the approvals, everything above has gone okay and it's about to start the approval. So that's good. We don't want to say please review it. We just want to post a message back to the person that's submitted the file and say, just to let you know, this has been submitted okay. So this at the moment doesn't have any app mentions in or anything, but we can add those in, so that's good. And it's got the posting back into Teams for us whether it's approved or rejected, which is exactly what we want. And then we just need to make a small tweak to the approval so that it goes into people's flow push notifications and into their emails, which we can do quite easily. So first thing we want to do is pick a SharePoint site, which is going to be our team. So if we jump back into Teams, obviously we've been doing everything in the recap core project team in our videos, and we want to set up a place where we're going to tell the business, if you want to submit something into this approval flow, put your documents in this folder. So we've got an escalations process. We set up an escalations folder, and within the escalations folder, we've got a submitted folder. So we'll hold our template for what we want to request outside of that folder, which is going to be this escalation form. And we're going to tell people in our business process to say, well, copy this form, we'll mark it read-only anyway, copy this form, save it down, rename it something, and then move it into the submitted folder. And that's going to be the trigger. So we need to set up these folders so that we can then link them back to the flow. So when you set up where you want to the folder you want to monitor stuff going into, then that's okay. And we can come back in here and we're going to go and pick the team. Recap core project team. And we're going to pick the library, which is going to be documents. And then we've got to pick the folder that we want to use. So if we click on this little folder icon, you might see loads of stuff that you don't think is in your team, which is fine. It's going to be shared documents. And if you click on that, it's going to pick the entire shared documents to monitor, which we don't want. If you click on the arrow, it's going to drill down. So then we can start to see something a bit more like what we used to in Teams, which is the channel folders. So we'll do testing, escalations, and I'm going to pick submitted. So that's going to say when a file's created in that folder, in submitted folder, then kick off the flow. One thing I'll come back to in part 2 or part 3, and remind me in the comments if I forget, is to limit columns by view, which I found was important by accident when the flow trigger stopped working for some reason, and I'll go through why that's going to be really important, especially in a big team with lots of files, in part 2 or part 3. So for now, we're going to, anything that's put in that submitted folder is going to start the flow and trigger it. So then it's going to post the message back into our team for us, which is great. So we're going to add the team ID, which is just picking up the team. So we're going to go and pick recap core project team again. I'm going to pick which channel we want. You can see it's all pre-populated from when you do the selections, which is really handy. And then we don't need to know what they are really, but if we want to add anything else in, I'll just show you. If you click in the box, so assuming this message was blank, you can then see this dynamic content pops up on the right hand side, and then you can see everything that it's picked up above that. So the only thing above it at the moment is when a file is created, and here all of the dynamic content you can pick from that step. So if you checked it out, you can pick up that. So all the metadata that you can possibly think of is going to be in here. And some things will make sense to you and some things won't. So just ignore all the stuff that doesn't for now, or look at some of the templates to see what they've done, or Google some of the stuff on YouTube. So they're picking up link to item, which is great. They're picking up the name and created by display name, looks like. So that's the person that's created that item, which is great. So it's going to say who's done that, but it's not going to mention them. So we'll come back to that and we'll see how to do that afterwards. So it's going to start an approval. Approve, reject, first response, great. Review the name of the file, that is. If we click there, you can see again it's going to be name, so file name of the item in the document libraries. And then assign to is going to be our first thing we need to change. So at the moment we've got nothing to put in there dynamically. We're just going to have to type something in. So if I put me in there to start with, you can see quite easily if anyone wants to then change that I'm the person to approve it, they're going to have to go into Flow, change me to somebody else, and someone that knows how to use Flow is probably going to have to do that, because if you didn't know anything about Flow and you clicked on this, you'd probably be like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So that's the bit we want to change later on to pick up a list. So in the details bit, you can put anything you want, but it's going to put created by. It's got a link back to the item again in the approval, and the description of that link is going to be the name of the file. So again, we'll leave that just as default, and we'll see what happens. And then if we come down here, we don't need to worry about the right hand side here because that's all done for us. If we come back into just finish off so we can get something to work and see how it's going to show up before we change it, we need to say we're going to post back into the same team, into the same channel, and then see what it's going to post back for us when we run it. Same thing for post rejection. We'll pick up the team and the channel. So we've put in enough stuff now to make this flow work. So if we save that flow, make sure that's saved, the new name, and then if we do test, that's saying I'll perform the trigger action. So that means I need to put a file into that folder to get it to work. Sometimes the screen change is a bit slow, but what you want to wait for is this blue circle going around, and that's just saying, look, to see it work now, perform the starting action, and then we can then watch how it shows up in Flow. So if I go and copy this file, and rename it. And then I'm going to move it into the submitted folder, which is what we want our users to do when they are doing it in real life. So choose submitted, click move. It looks like it's moved it. If we jump back into the flow, then we should be able to see it working and working its way down the flow. So it looks like it's picked it up right, the trigger. And then each step is going to do a little ping and see if it's worked or not. So I have just got a flow approval pop up on my phone, which is great. So I've got it in my app. If I jump into Teams, you can see it's now waiting for that approval. So it's not done anything further down, but it should have posted a message into Teams. So if we go back into here and into posts, you can see it's posted this message. So it says, "Hi team, Gavin Jones has added a new file, testflow1, please view the file and move ASAP." See this link's hyperlinked right, so it's going to point back to the right place, and if we click it, it's going to open the file for us, which we won't wait for it to have a look at. You can see there's no app mention, so no one's going to see that, like our basic Teams training. If you don't mention someone on a new post, assume no one's going to see it. So we need to change that. The flow actually popped up correctly. Jump into flow here. Probably is in the approvals to review test flow 1. So we can approve it straight from there if we want, or click on it and get a bigger look if there's any other details in. So we've got the link back to the file. See who's it uploaded by. We can choose our response, approve, reject, or we can reassign it, search for anyone else, and we can add a comment and it'll go back in there. And if I jump into my emails, you can see we've got the approval here as well. So if we approve it in the Flow app in Teams, also if you're in Flow in the web, you can get your approvals there as well. But if we approve it here in the Flow app in Teams, confirm. Response successfully recorded. If we just quickly jump back into Chrome, we can see the flows run successfully, and we can even dive down to see how long it took and where it went. So gray X doesn't mean it didn't get anything, and the green tick, so it's posted back into the team for us. So if we just jump back into, we can see that it's then posted again. And again without an app mention, saying Gavin Jones has approved test flow with comments approved. So it's sort of doing most of what we want. We need to go and tailor it, but you can see we've got an approval flow that works and did it pretty quickly if it wasn't for my dithering about. But it's pretty easy to set up an approval. There's some things we need to tweak, like I say, but everything's sorted. If I just jump back into the email, you can see if I click off and click back on that email, it's going to update that and say you've already completed this request. So it knows that I've approved it in Flow, and it changes that email so I can't double approve it. Even if it were not updated, when I went to click approve, it would probably refresh and stop me doing it. And if you had multiple people doing on the same step and it was first to approve, whether they approved it in Flow or email, it would take everybody else's approval step away, which is what I was trying to explain before, where if you do some other options where you post an adaptive card into Teams to approve, or do something else a bit more complicated rather than just using the default approval step, sometimes you can approve it in one place, it doesn't take the approval away from the other place, so you could end up with people thinking they've approved it when actually someone else has already rejected it, for example. With that, unless you do something complicated to catch and refresh and do stuff like that. So stick with the normal approvals if you are not an advanced user like myself. Not that I'm an advanced user, not an advanced user like myself, yeah. I'm just learning it as well. So that seems to work pretty well, doesn't it? We'll go back into edit mode. So we're just going to do a couple of quick things before we finish this video, and then we'll do the more bespoking in the second video. First thing we want to do is make sure that we're covering the basics of Teams that we keep banging on about on this channel. At mention in every new post, assume no one's going to see it if you don't. So you can use the basic HTML, and I don't know HTML. You can just Google how to do it, or look at some of the flows to see how to make these a bit nicer. So we just jump back into what it looks like already. So it's one line of text, and there's no heading, there's no bold, there's no at mention, and it says hi team, which is the thing that is really annoying for me. Trying to train people not to do that and do an at mention instead. So we're going to turn this into that it's going to at mention the person that's requested it and ping them to say that it's been submitted okay. Because actually pinging the approver here, please review the file and approve it, they can't approve it from there anyway. So you don't want to tell a person that's approving it because they're going to get an approval. You want to tell a person that submitted it that it's been submitted successfully. And if they don't get that ping, they know that something's gone wrong and they need to probably chase it up manually. So we're going to change what this does a bit. So it's still going to post a message into the team, but instead of saying hi team, we are going to say, click in, sometimes a bit tricky to get your cursor in one place. So first of all, we're going to do a hash, which is to make it bold, I think, or a header. Someone that knows HTML can correct me. So we're just going to say approval submitted successfully. And we're going to say what approval that is, so we can steal this bit. And then we're going to do 2 new lines, which is those little arrow things, and BR for break, presumably. So if you do an enter here, you'd think it would show through into the thing, but it doesn't. It just gives you some more space to see what's going on. But if you add break, that's going to enter 2 new lines. And if you just enter 2 new lines here as well, you can sort of see what it's going to do. So we are going to, where it says created by display name, we're going to get rid of that because it might be that it's picked up. We want to see who's modified it, really. So modified by display name, we'll add in there. Oh, add it in the wrong place. Modified by display name. And to get an at, so when we do that, that displays the person's name. And if we'd added an at before it, it would probably pick up an at mention. So to put an at in HTML, we need to do this little arrow thing, / at that, and that's then going to turn that into an at mention, hopefully. So we'll say at the person that's submitted the file, your approval request has been submitted successfully. Sit back and chill whilst it goes around the approvers. So we're going to add some more stuff into here when we add the bit into the flow where we're going to look up some information on that file and add it back into both the messages that go to the person that submitted it, the approval flow, and we're going to collate that information into a SharePoint list. But for now, we're just going to see what that looks like that then gets posted back into our team. And we can, if it's looking all right, we can change these approval things at the bottom as well. But for now, we'll just see what this post message is going to show up like. So if we save that flow and run a test, and then now we've already run one, we can say just use data from the previous run, so we don't need to run it again. And we can pick the one that succeeded, so we know that's going to work. Hit test, and then that's just going to use the same file that we've just already uploaded. It's going to trigger correctly because we know it's run successfully to that point. It's going to post a message into the team now. So if I didn't have my teams on Do Not Disturb, it will have popped up an app mention, hopefully. Okay, so that's interesting. So it's not done what I thought it'd do, which is great for error handling. So it's done the hash, which we don't want it to be a hash, because we want it to be bold. We have got the text in right. The links still worked, but it's not done an app mention. It's just got normal text. So I think I've spotted my deliberate mistake already. So if we go back into what we've just done, and a bit of this is trial and error, especially if you're new to it. So the links worked, the hash thing hasn't worked to be a heading. Maybe it's this href thing. So when I did my link to files before, I didn't have this HTML in. I had done it a slightly different way, so I wonder if that's what's making it go funny. So I did square brackets, I did the name, in square brackets, and then immediately followed by link to the item. And you can search the dynamic content here if you keep losing stuff. Link to item. You probably have to make sure your cursor's back in the right place because it sometimes appears somewhere you don't want. So I did square brackets for the name and normal open brackets for the link to the item, which should do the link with the display of the name. Hopefully that hash is now going to make this bold, and the two breaks will then do another line. And then I see what I've done with this @ so actually we want to do @ and then the email rather than the display name. So if I delete that and change this to modified by email, again I've got to click in the right place, insert modified by email. Okay, so that's looking better. So let's save that and test it again. I think I've lost my, I don't know what I did there, lost my closing bracket. So let's save that again. And let's run a quick test again. So you see the other test is still running because I've not approved it or anything, but that's fine. You can kick off a few at the same time and then just go and get rid of them all afterwards. So it's picking up the same file, posting a message into the team. I keep getting the flow request on my mobile, so that's it's working. And you can still see it's still not done what we wanted it to do. So a bit of trial and error. So let's just check that we've got the right Teams action in. So what I thought it was picking up was post a message as a flow bot to a channel. It might be this post a message one. Let's see. So you can see that there's a few different options in Power Automate at the moment with different versions. Some of them preview, some of them aren't. And again, if you pick up a template, you're not entirely sure which one it is, but I have found that some of them accept HTML, some of them you can just do rich formatting in, but you can't do other things. And so when I did my proper flow late last year, I ended up picking post a message as the flow bot to a channel, and I thought that's what the template was doing, but let's use that instead and see if we get the same result. So I'm just going to replace the one we've done. So we're going to pick up the same team, pick up the same channel, and then if we copy some of this out, and post it in here. We might need to redo these, so we'll pick the dynamic content straight from the list, because sometimes we copy and paste it, sometimes goes a bit funny, but not always. So we want the name and the link to the item, 2 lines, and then at, and then modified by email. So then let's delete this one that we had before and see if this now works with the formatting we want. Cool, so that's half worked now. You see that what I didn't even notice before is that when it's posting a message before, it's posting it as me, but if I'm just the person setting up the flow, probably don't want to be posting as me all the time, because if someone replies to that, I'm going to get notified, and actually it's the process. So I don't want to get notified. Sometimes someone puts reply to every single approval step because they might want to collaborate on that themselves together and mention other people. And again, by default, if you're the person that's posted the message, unless you go and turn off the thread notifications, you're going to get notified. So first thing we fixed from the template is that it wasn't using the posted message as a flow bot, it's using something else. We want it to be posting as flow, so it's then flow that's sort of owning that. So we've fixed that bit, which I didn't even notice before. So it's posting it in the message as flow. You can see it's picked up a heading, so it wasn't bold and it was a heading. I thought it was right, thinking what I've done there. So it's picking up that it's a heading, and it's got even the link as a heading, which is great. So it's made the text a bit bigger. So that's what that hash was doing at the start. If I just jump back in there, so that's what that hash is doing. So making all of that line a heading. It's got the rest of it as normal body text, which is great, but it's still missing the at mention. So we need to fix that somehow. I think I just fixed it. So what? Again, not knowing HTML, which someone probably would have spotted straight away, is that you need at without a thing there and at with a little slash thing there. So if you're HTML and you know what you're doing, then you're sure you found that very painful. But this was just to show some brand new citizen developers how you might use flow. So hopefully it's been useful to see me getting it wrong. So you need an at there and an at there. If we save that, then I am 80% hopeful that this is now going to work. Boom. So you can see now I've got an at mention. If I hover over it, you can see it's a proper link into me. And again, if I wasn't on Do Not Disturb whilst I'm recording, then it would have pinged up in the bottom right-hand side. And it says your approval's been submitted successfully, sit back and chill. So it goes around the approvers. You can see it's then just doing a shameless plug for itself to say, I created this using Microsoft Flow, although I haven't changed that. It's actually Power Automate. And you can link back to get back into Flow if no one else had knew what that was. So then we can just go and replicate that for the other 2 approval steps if we wanted to. So we could go back and copy these bits into here, so that it's then again at mentioning the person that's requested that original file, and telling them that it's been approved. So you're getting the notifications in Teams. So if they're off, someone else could see what's going on in there. The approver's getting a ping. Okay, so that's it for part one. So we covered how to choose a template that's going to be most fit for what you want to do. We looked at bespoking some of the options so we can put in things that we want. In next week's video, we're going to look at how to make the dynamic list of approvers. So we've just got one person that's assigned to at the moment. What we want to do is create a list to, if we could, make a number of different levels of approval and have multiple approvers all at the same time. So we're going to do that next week, and we're also going to look at pulling some information off the file that's been submitted so we can use it in the approval flow, so people can see on their mobile phone notification or on their email stuff about that approval that's in the document, so they don't have to keep going into the link each time. It's going to be there for them. We'll do that next week, and then the week after we'll look at rolling all of that together into creating a tracker SharePoint list that you can then embed back into Teams as a tab. So then you're keeping everything in Teams. You're getting the notifications in Teams, it's submitted successfully. You're getting the notifications back in Teams that it's been approved or rejected. So multiple people can see the same thing. And you're also then keeping the log of what's gone on. If it's been approved or rejected, you can see who it's with. If it's mid-process, you can see in a SharePoint list that's embedded as a tab in Teams. So bringing everything back into Teams from that approval process in the most simplistic way that I've found, at least. So if that was useful, remember to like the video if you liked it. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell icon so you get notified every time I release a new video. We've got new videos coming out on Teams every single Tuesday. And if you watch this and want the second two parts, if they haven't come out yet, they'll be in the next couple of weeks. If you're watching this back in time, or forward in time even, then there'll probably be a link to those in the description below, so make sure you click in the description and have a look. Also remember, if you want the training deck that we use in real life, either to use as training in your organisation or just to get some tips that we've covered written down all in one place, then click the free download link in the description below to get that deck. And then finally, as you all might know by now if you follow this channel, we think there's a massive opportunity to make meetings better in organisations. We love Microsoft Teams for increasing collaboration and productivity, but still I think there's too many meetings in big organisations, and we think there's a better way of doing that. So we've got a meeting timer. It's available in the iOS App Store. Search for MeeTime or visit www.meetimeapps.com if you want any other information about that app. So thanks for watching so far, and we'll see you next week.